missed it earlier as well. We were on stream and that there was a thunder and lightning storm directly above my apartment block.
Really?
There was no delay. So what I did is I actually knocked the lights off and I opened the curtains wide.
Right.
And I was streaming, but I was leaning out of camera, so you can only see half my face. And you can see the full lightning storm lighting up the room.
So
and it was like a lightning strike about every 5 or 6 seconds.
So you
for
were
like 25, 30 minutes. That's how fast it happens. Like, and I was like, so this is what happens when I sometimes lose power. And everyone was like, oh. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes these hit the buildings. And it's like,
I love that
I
love that you're beating somebody and they tune into your stream. I was like, was I beaten by Frankenstein? Just half your face, Phantom of the Opera style with lightning in the background. It's like Hammer villain trying to kill me.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, I wish I was playing something like Outlast or something.
Yeah.
Like, why am I playing a horror game right now? This would be amazing. It's like, but yeah, the full like it was directly above us. It was like every time the thunder went off, I could feel the vibration through my feet.
Jesus.
It was like it was immediately above us, and yeah, it was fucking mental. And like everyone in chat was like, "Holy shit!" And I'm like, "Yeah, this is monsoon season," and they're like, "So like, how long does this last?" I'm like, "About 4 months."
Right, 4 months.
I really want to make a little like, you know, Dave Glennon 2018, and someday when your stream cuts, I just put that up. Just this sepia picture of you and music going in the background. I will,
the slow fade.
I will remember you. Anyway,
hopefully it'll be done soon. So.
Yeah, we'll do the thing. I'm Johnny, that's Glennon. We've got a beautiful guest here with us, Brian Lelas. We're here to examine how tropes bleed across movies, TV shows, and video games. Welcome to Dystropia.
I have to say, it's only at this moment now that you've said that I've realised that this isn't a trap.
Yeah.
That this is actually happening and that this is not some kind of thing about to land on me or I'm not going to fall through the floor or something.
For any of our regular viewers and listeners, this is the often mentioned Lelas that we torture.
Did I do a whole episode where I just talked about the movie The Game, about how that's one of my favourite movies because somebody tortures someone?
I actually was listening to that episode while I was walking to work and I was just wondering, he could be behind me right now because I knew I was walking past where you lived and I've often bumped into you on the way in. I was like, this would be super weird.
And we have a book launch planned for the end of the month. I say we.
It's you.
Yeah, I have a book launch planned for the end of the month where I'm launching your book. I'll put details up. It seems like a fun thing to do on the Dystropia site. But
So hang on. Explain why you're the one doing the book launch.
So, Brian has been writing a book for years.
4 years.
Yeah, and I really liked his first book, and I wanted to read the second one. So
we should point out these are part of the same story. This is two halves of the same story, and he went George R.R. Martin on it, and so it take fucking 4 years.
Yeah. So I on April 1st did a Kickstarter to raise money for a launch party for a book, and it basically gave us a 6 months deadline, and the idea was going to be that. Either your book got finished and then we launch your book, or I write a book in the meantime and I knew what the title was going to be for your book and I was going to steal your title and launch and release my own book with your title.
Oh, that's the part I didn't know.
Yeah, I was going to release Resolver.
You were going to steal the title, so I couldn't.
Your book was going to be called Resolver and mine was going to be called Resolver. I barely know her.
I barely know her.
But luckily you finished your book in the meantime and we're having a party.
Oh, it's not out yet. You can still sneak it.
That is very true.
Yeah,
I could have my party a week early and still release.
Wow.
Go on, Glenn.
So, so in that spirit, we're doing a look at book adaptations.
Yes.
The book was better, or was it?
Yes.
Or was it? Yeah.
Or was it? Was there any improvements on books? Like, that'd be a good one actually, but yeah. So for when Lelas's books inevitably get picked up, by T.G. Caher for some sort of adaptation,
I'll take
to rival
take
Game
that
of
deal.
Thrones.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so, what are the other book adaptations that we will hold up in the pantheon of the greats?
Well, do you want to kick us off, Lelas, as a published author and all around cool guy?
So we'll do films first. What film adaptation?
Are we talking about the book is better?
You can talk about either way. So to kick us off then, one of the ones that keeps coming up whenever I'm reading this is there's always at the top of an article that Chuck Palahniuk thinks that Fight Club is a better movie
that's true.
than a book.
That is absolutely
like he is.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, absolutely. You guys nailed the pacing. My book is shit compared to the movie that you guys made. And I'm like, oh, that's really interesting that he would think that, because it is that it goes against the grain. Everybody thinks that the book was better, because when you read a book, obviously you have your own emotional investment, you have your own kind of feelings as you go through, and you picture your own characters, and even things that are fairly loved, like Harry Potter and stuff like that. Anyone who grew up reading the books was like, no, she didn't look like that, or no, he didn't do it that way. Or even I remember when Lord of the Rings came out, people were like, no, in the book he had 3 coins in his hand in that scene, and I was like, are you fucking serious? You're going to get hung up on the number of coins in his hand. It really matters in the book.
Remember, Johnny, there are people out there that give out when, like, oh, that fictional character, like the fucking Thor thing with
Idris Elba?
With Idris Elba, yeah. And it's like
the whitest of the gods.
No, but that was the thing. No, but like Heimdall is described as being like, his skin is so white, it's pretty much like described as glowing white. Of all of the Norse gods, like it's like he's one. So they're like, he can't be black. He's not really black. It's like, it's fucking fictional. You fucking. I hate that. Like,
I super liked it in Deadpool 2 when they did Domino as an inverted color switch. So instead of a white character with a black blotch around her eye, it was a black character with a white marker in her eye. And I was like, that's a really nice way to do that. Just to be like, by the way, fuck you guys.
Yeah, and she fucking nailed it.
She did. Like, she was amazing. Best thing in the movie.
Yeah. So you can take either, whatever. If there's a particular film you want to bitch about, now's your time.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of thought about this like the book is better. And the one that came to mind straight away for me was Ender's Game. Now, when I was thinking about this episode, I didn't want to just shit all over really bad stuff. I thought that'd be really easy.
Yep.
The Ender's Game movie is not terrible, but the book,
I actually like it.
The book is just so much better though. Like there's just so much more going on.
Yeah.
One of the things that's really cool about the character of Ender in the book is that he's really young. He's like 6 or something in the book, and in the movie you can tell that he's like double that easily. And in the book, he's also just psychotically violent as well.
Nice.
He's like,
I haven't read Ender's Game.
He almost kills a bunch of kids in the shower in one scene, and like because they were bullying him. The other thing I like about the book a lot more is that there's just so much more like description of the battle school itself. That's so much.
It's
more
fleshed out a lot more. Like
So for anyone who doesn't know Ender's Game, it's a cult of Fortnite players, and it turns out that there really was a bus in real life in the sky, and the kids didn't know. That's
it's you've actually seen the film, Johnny, yeah?
I did watch it as part of a bunch of other movies at the same time to look at the UI in the movie. That's why I watched it. Okay. So I'm pretty sure I didn't. I think I pretty much scanned through that and Oblivion and a bunch of other ones.
Yeah, I wonder why.
So I need to do that for I need to do it for
a thing.
It sounds so fake when you say it.
It does sound so fake.
Yeah, it does.
I need to do it for a reason, right?
Yeah, the whole idea of the story of the book/movie is that humanity is pretty much like the loser species in the galaxy, and there's these aliens who are way stronger than them. So they prepare genius kids to fight in this battle school, which is like this zero gravity, really cool. That the effects in the movie are actually pretty awesome, like how they visualize all that. The thing with the movie is they only do one thing there in the whole movie. So
this is a fun part where I can bring up my notable trouble, which is adaption induced plot hole. So the idea that obviously a book can be as long as you want, and this is the kind of thing that happens in like the Game of Thrones books and stuff like that, where in order to get it a reasonable size for a TV show or a movie, you got to cut shit out left and right. And my favorite one ever is in the movie The Wizard of Oz, because in the book there are the Good Witch of the North, the Good Witch of the South, the Wicked Witch of the East, the Wicked Witch of the West. So there's more witches. And at the very start of the movie, at the very start of the book, the Good Witch of the North gives her the shoes, and then at the very end of the book, the Good Witch of the South tells her how to get home. But in the movie, just to save time, they made it one witch called Glenda. That's true. This is Glenda. She's going to sort you. And she gives her the shoes, and then later on tells her how to get home. I was like, you just click your heels together. I was like, I've been through so much. I've murdered 2 witches. He was like,
I had to drop a house on someone.
I've killed so many people. What's wrong with you? And she's like, you wouldn't. She says the line, but you wouldn't have believed me, as a hand wave. And I was like, I have seen munchkins and flying monkeys. Why wouldn't I have believed you?
But would have thought a small amount of water would fall on me.
So are there any, in Ender's Game, is there any things that as you were watching you're like, that doesn't make sense because of X, Y, or
They're
Z?
relatively faithful actually to the book. They just cut a lot of stuff. Like the whole storyline of his 2 siblings is not in the movie at all. Really. Right. Which is really important to his character and how it kind of shows how he gets so smart and how he figures things out. It's like they kind of got half the story into the film and left a lot of the stuff that made the book so interesting out. It's kind of a shame because they could have maybe, I'm not saying they should have made 2 movies around like that out of
I was going to say, how big is the book?
It's not even that big. Like it's probably like 250 pages. It's not a massive thing. Like
it's the thing though. It's like it benefits from what, you know, in a book you can very quickly describe something in a paragraph, and that paragraph could be could have to be like 90 seconds of establishing shots around a location to really show off everything, you know what I mean? And it's like they just don't have time and the budget for that, and they'll just go, no, we just need to keep this, you know, punchy and keep it moving, and you don't want people like switching off. And that seems to be a fear in sci-fi a lot more than like you'd get in fantasy or something like that, or just fiction, where they're afraid that I think it's because like early like hard sci-fi had a lot of essentially what they call technobabble, like it's where they're explaining something, and that's because like whoever actually wrote the original book did the research, and it's in the book, and then they put it in the films, and those films people are like, I don't care, just move it along.
Mainframe is a cool word. Can you say mainframe? That's a cool word.
But then it's like, but what do we like? So it becomes this whole thing of you gotta have a beat every so many minutes. There has to be a beat happening every so many minutes. And then they have to keep the story moving around those beats. So it feels like in sci-fi a lot more than any other thing that they just kind of very quickly gloss over stuff and move on. So.
Yeah, I'd recommend the book, and the sequel is even better, actually, The Speaker for the Dead. It's a really, really good book series. It kind of goes a bit crazy with like, I think there's like 10 or 11 books in the series now.
Oh, really?
Like, but the first 2 are excellent. I haven't read any more than that. I think that's enough.
It starts with End's Game, and then Ender's Game, and then Endist's Game, and it just keeps going that way.
End harder. End harder with vengeance.
Ender Game, I barely know her.
I barely know her game.
I will say though that like, you know, there is I didn't want to watch that film just because of some of the shit that the author had said.
Right.
I was like, because he's got a bad record on stuff like on the old homophobia and whatnot.
Right.
And I was just and like, well, that's kind of what I was telling myself. He also fucked up Ultimate Iron Man, the comic series. So I also hadn't forgiven him for that either. So, you know, I was like, you know, I just, for years I was like, fuck Orson Scott Card. And like, Ender's Game should go. I was like, yeah, but you don't know what he did to Iron Man. And then people were like, oh, you're being stupid. And then it was like, fuck Orson Scott Card. And like, yeah, he's a homophobe. I'm like, he is? Oh, great. An extra reason. Like,
no, I double hate him. Wait, why did you what?
No, I'm justified.
Cool.
Just to get that out there. Yeah. What was your one, Johnny?
The movies that I've watched, the ones that I've read all the books and then seen the movies is kind of all the Stephen King back catalogue, and the range of kind of quality of movies that's come from that is really like 2 ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, really.
It's the craziest stuff. I really, really like the book Pet Sematary, and I think the movie is just meh. And I remember watching as a kid and being scared, but like I think it's scared because a cyclist gets run over and his head explodes, and it's just pure schlock horror. Obviously, The Shining is one of the greatest movies ever made, but I also watched the TV adaptation that Stephen King prefers, starring, I can't think of his name. He's the guy who's always like a sleazy lawyer in TV shows. And it keeps everything from the book, including the bits where the topiary animals, the hedge maze animals, encroach on the dude. But in the book, it's like he doesn't know whether they are getting close. Like every time he looks away and looks back, he doesn't know if they're getting closer or not. and he's like running around with a croquet mallet looking crazy. And in the movie, they don't have them come to life or anything. They just have them like the camera zooms in on them suddenly. It's like and there's a musical sting, and I'm like, this is stupid. So kind of going over and back on those, it is ones where at any given moment the book is better because you're like even Misery. I've read the book and watched the movie, and I think they both stand up really, really well.
Yeah, it's true.
But I think I'm reading the book and I'm like, oh, fuck, this is about cocaine addict. Like, this is about an addiction. This is I am getting a look into the head of somebody and getting the horror of somebody who I would have never been able to experience that otherwise. Like the idea of him going that insane, is tied to a bed and everything, like crazy. And then the movie is like completely different. It's a force to see the characters act that, like, oh my god, I'm genuinely scared for these people. And then on the kind of the last Stephen King one is The Mist, and the movie, not the TV show.
Good.
Yes, I know. I liked both, but I just like the Silent Hill aesthetic. I'm like, fuck, unzip.
You like the TV show, but sometimes you're wrong.
Yeah, so, yeah. That's fair. But Stephen King knew the director. I can't think of the director's name now either.
Frank Darabont.
Thank you. And they were talking about doing it, and Darabont was like, I'm going to do this with the ending. It changes your ending. And Stephen King was like, fuck, if you can get away with it, absolutely do that. And they do a really good dark ending that you wouldn't see in a movie otherwise. Yeah, and Stephen King was like, I wish I'd ended the book like that. That is amazing. Well done, you.
What it was that he had... he didn't say it to King initially. He was like, I might want to make some changes and stuff. And King was like, go for it if you want to.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens, because I'll have to approve it anyway before it goes through. But I mean... I know your work, and Frank Darabont was also the director on Shawshank Redemption, so like that's why he'd worked with him before, and he was like, I kind of trust you, I think you'll be able to pull it off. And he put in that ending, that infamous ending, and the studio rejected it.
Really?
And he wrote another one and submitted it, and then they sent the wrong script to King.
Right. So
King saw the one with Darabont's original ending in it. Then they contacted him and went, oh, no, that's the wrong one. And he goes, well, I don't care, because this is the one you're making. He says, if you don't use this ending, I'm not letting you make the film.
That's amazing.
So cool. Yeah.
Love
that. So he was very much like, they had talked beforehand, and he was like, I'll let you know, I trust you, but I'm still going to have to sign off on stuff. But unless you've started doing even drugs I wouldn't touch, you're probably okay. It's that ending is incredible.
Yeah. It is already a good movie, and then that kind of taps off in a really nice way.
It's one of those movies that people talk about for the ending, for that reason.
It's something comes out like A Quiet Place, and everyone's talking about it, and like, oh, this innovative stuff like that. I was like, can I talk about The Mist again? I really want to talk. Let's go back to that.
Well, that's the thing. Like 20 years from now,
yeah,
we'll probably be sitting here going, oh god, what was the name of that film? The horror film that your man from The Office did. But we'll all still remember the ending for The Mist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I want you guys to name some of the ones that are the classic The Book Was Betters, like the ones that are everybody holds up, because I did pretty much just pick ones where I think the movie was a better option, or like look, those kind of stories.
Yeah, no, I have them book. You answer your ones, and then like, you finish your part.
I'll do one more then, which is a fact more so than an actual choice. I was reading up on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and that was originally a book called Who Censored Roger Rabbit, and obviously Disney and Warner Bros. And everybody worked together and made that movie, and it is one of the greatest movies ever made. And the author of the novel loved it so much, the movie, that when he went to write the next novel, the sequel to it, he just retconned everything, and he made the whole thing a dream, because he wanted to continue writing from the movie rather than his own novel. He was like, that's how much I love the movie compared to my novel. And you're like, fuck. The idea that the opening line would be, and then he woke up and said, shit, I'm married to this beautiful Jessica Rabbit, not whatever stupid thing I said previously. It seems so good. So that entertains me so much.
Yeah, that's fair. For my ones, I would say we'll start off with a really contentious point.
Yep.
Lord of the Rings, I don't think the book is better. I think the film is better.
I agree with you. And
that is coming from someone who has read Lord of the Rings cover to cover 3 times. The first time I read it, I was 8.
Yeah.
And I started reading it, and it took me like a year to read that book at the age of 8. But I'd read The Hobbit. See, in English, when we were doing English in primary school, we did the first chapter of The Hobbit. We did Unexpected Party.
Yeah.
And then The Hobbit was in the was in the school library, and I got it from there, and I read it, and I fucking loved it. And then I kept asking for Lord of the Rings for Christmas. I was like, I want Lord of the Rings, I want Lord of the Rings. And I got it, and then like I got book tokens for my birthday. That was the year that started the whole thing of my parents would get me like the first book of 1 or 2 fantasy and sci-fi series, and then a month later on my birthday they would just give me book tokens, and I could continue whatever series I wanted.
Sounds good.
And it took me a year to read all the Lord of the Rings, and that was what got me into fantasy. That was what got me into all that. Like I would not be as much into it as I am if I hadn't read those books. Like, that said, the films do a magnificent job of trimming a lot of fat. Of
Tom
getting
Bombadil,
the story.
You leave Tom Bombadil alone. I like Tom Bombadil.
But this is the thing,
Tom
like
Bombadil.
Tom Bombadil was like, as a character, for people who've never read the book and have only seen the films, Tom Bombadil is a character who is essentially an earth god.
Yeah.
And shows up early in the book, basically the point where when they encounter the ring wraiths at the very start, and they have to run for the ferry and make for Bree. There's a whole big section before that where they get lost in the woods. They meet Tom Bombadil's wife, who basically runs around naked. She's a forest nymph, and she just goes everywhere naked. And they go back to his house, and they have a big party. The guy never stops singing.
Yep.
And it gets fucking infuriating after 3 pages.
God.
He never stops singing. And they're like, can we leave the ring here? And he goes, well, unfortunately, it corrupt the forest eventually. And they're like, well, okay. And then they leave, and they go over towards Bree. But on their way, they stumble across this basically a whole big field full of barrows. A whole big area with all these old crypts. And they get lost in one of the crypts, and they get attacked by the undead. And Tom Bombadil shows up and just fucking blitzes everything. It's like snap of his fingers, and everything in a 10 mile radius is fucked. And he's just like, no, because that's how powerful I am. And it's like, yeah, and then you go, and then you have all this struggle of the book, and it's like, why the fuck wasn't Tom part of the party?
Come help, like
yeah.
Yeah,
it's I kind of like the forest. The forest is on Earth too. Like we're saving Earth.
Yeah, no, because the part of he's like, I only have power when I'm in forests, and it's like, fucking 3/4 of the book take part in a forest. Like, don't give me that shit.
Put a tree in a pot and bring it with you.
Yeah. But stick a plant in your hat. Like,
it was like, if only we had walking trees. we could go. It would be fun, right?
But it's like, yeah, that's one of them. Then if you like, and particularly if you look at the director's cut of the Lord of the Rings, the Mouth of Sauron is not in the books. The Mouth of Sauron does not appear in the books. Wow. That is genuinely one of the creepiest bits of cinema I've ever seen, and it is a fantastic scene. That whole, just this one character that comes out, because at no point in the books is Sauron given a voice. It's always from the perspective of the good guys. It's always from the perspective of the Fellowship themselves. You never get a cut to Saruman and him basically going mad, raising his army and all the rest. So when it happens, it's kind of out of nowhere in the books. You're like, what the fuck did this come from? Like, but in the film, they show you their motivation. They show you what's happening. They show you, they put a voice to Sauron and to this whole thing of like, you know, that creepy mouth thing, and you're like, yeah, okay. It's all just like, now there is one thing I don't like about the film is that like the ending is 40 minutes long and all in slow motion.
Yeah,
but I mean, other than that, like I know a guy who actually took the 3 films and then took all the parts that were slow motion and reverted them to normal speed and took over an hour off the runtime of the film of the 3 films. Like he took over an hour off it. But he was like,
real quick,
I was like, how did it work? And he was like, it's great, but the elves aren't as magical.
Yeah, of course. No, I was going to say, I agree with you that the Lord of the Rings movies, I've read The Hobbit and all the Lord of the Rings books, and I think the Lord of the Rings movies, when they came out, they were so amazing at that, making that translation, that now if I remember reading the book Lord of the Rings, I actually picture scenes from the movie, and I can remember that, like I remember the scenes that way. But with the Hobbit movies, if I remember reading like a scene from it, I still remember the book. I still remember how I pictured it in the book. And I'm like, no, my dragon was better. No, that scene was in my head. And the difference between the two, the failing of the Hobbit movies,
is just a disaster.
And then it shows how good the Lord of the Rings are, that they could replace something that I really loved in my head like that, and I didn't care.
One of my mates who has a theory that's why Martin Freeman always looks so pissed off. It's because he signed up to do the Hobbit films thinking they were going to be as good as Lord of the Rings, and then that happened.
Yeah,
but that'd be Yeah, but like I just that was kind of the exception where I want to say that one. I actually think the film is better than the books. I think it's a better thing. Unless people were like, I want to read. I'm a big reader.
Yep.
I'd be like, well, have you read Lord of the Rings? But if someone's like, what's a good fantasy story? I'd be like, watch the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Go watch it. It's a much better experience. Like take a weekend off, get the extended editions, and just chill on the couch. But in book wise, spot on. Shawshank Redemption is pretty much almost like page for page, word for word into the film.
Bring that up if somebody else didn't, but
Silence of the Lambs is the same. Like I read it after seeing the movie. I was reading it going, this is the script. This is scene for scene.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'd say in terms of actually no, it's another one where the book was phenomenal, but I think the film surpassed it. Like again, I don't think it was a matter of like the difference between this and Lord of the Rings. I don't think it was trimming fat. I think they just meant like it was something that once you saw it visualized, you were like, holy shit, was Blade Runner. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is a great book.
Yeah.
But when you see it, the visuals, you're just like, I was like jaw on the floor.
Yeah.
I think Philip K. Dick has gone on record saying that he really, really loves that movie. I don't know if he said it's better.
He has. He says it's completed his vision of what that
really?
should be.
So, yeah.
And 2049. So like I was actually watching a podcast the other day, and the Rooster Teeth one, and they were talking about how one of the guys was talking about how he's shown his 15-year-old kid the 2 Blade Runner films, but out of interest, he showed them in reverse order.
Oh,
because he's like each story. I don't think it actually matters. You can watch the second one without knowing the first one, and you miss out on, half of one scene. Like you're kind of like, I'm not sure what's going on here, but okay.
Yeah.
And everything else makes sense. Everything else is explained.
Makes sense in Blade Runner. Right.
Well, but you know what I mean. Everything is a cohesive story.
Saying that, I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah, I get you.
It's a cohesive story, and it's like those 2 films, I think, hold up as that's how you do a sequel.
Yeah.
If ever you ask me how do you do a sequel, you point at that film. If you ask me how do you do an adaptation, you point at the first one.
Yeah.
They are just masterpieces. So that's my one. It's just Blade Runner. I just think is like, because I remember like I read a lot of Philip K. Dick. The Lord of the Rings effect. I used to go over to the library across the road from me. I lived facing a library, and I used to go over to it. It was in a shopping centre, but it was like one of the massive libraries, and I used to go in. And I just go to the sci-fi and fantasy section, and I literally started at A, and I went alphabetically through the whole thing.
Sounds great. And
I go in and get like 3 books because they don't let me take 3 books, and I'd be back a week later, handing them back, taking the next 3. And like the reading Blade Runner, I was like, because I was like, do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? But I'd already hit a couple of Philip K. Dick books by then. I was kind of like, I'm sure it's all right. And then I read it, I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of mental. And then on the back, it's like, made the film Blade Runner, and I'm like, I'm going to check this out. So
actually, if I was on IMDb once and I looked up Isaac Asimov just for something, and the way they do credit it as a writer or their thing, but there is one that's like inspired by, and he might have the widest range of movies where he is credited as because it's from iRobots and AI and all these kind of things, but there's so many things that are just adaptions of his work where they've taken a short story and completely changed the setting, changed everything, and done that, and I'm like, Jesus, he is and he's one where no matter how good a movie is, honestly, I prefer the little punchy stories, the iRobot book,
the multivac ones and stuff like that.
Yeah, all those ones that are really punchy and like they're like Black Mirror episodes. You read it, go wow. Yeah, cool. But if you do a 90-minute movie with Will Smith running around, I'm like, oh, this is stretching a bit now. You're trying to make a movie. I wanted a story.
Isaac Asimov is to sci-fi what Tolkien is to fiction. To fantasy. Yeah, but it's weird that he doesn't get the same amount of recognition. He's not his household name. But his stuff is incredible. I loved I used to collect his like anthology books of all those little short stories. Yeah. When I was like 10 and 11, I just used to like go to secondhand bookstores and book fairs and schools and just be like, Isaac Asimov, have you got any? And I just go through it, don't have that one. Yep. I remember buying like collections that, like, the little like the omnibus things with like 20 stories in them because I didn't have 3 of the stories. And I was like, I want it.
Genuinely was at a book fair recently, and like that, there was a bunch of his books, and me and another guy were lifting them up and calling out to each other I didn't know this other dude. We were calling out what stories were in the different books, Like, shit, I don't have that one. I have a book of like 10 of his stories, but not those two. And he's like, all right. And we were putting them aside for each other and stuff. And he's like, well, I really want that story. And I was like, well, that story's actually in this book as well. And I was swapping him and just making sure that we got as many stories as we could get out of it.
It's like it's the big three in literature. It's like the three grandfathers. It's Tolkien, Asimov, and Lovecraft.
Yay! I knew you were going to say Lovecraft. I was pretty happy with that.
But that's the thing. Like those three, they basically. So you've got Tolkien is fantasy, Asimov is sci-fi, and Lovecraft is homophobia and racism. I mean, horror. And
hey, some of these different skin-colored people are very scary. I love the Futurama joke where they have just in the background in Robot City or wherever that place was is Saint Asimov's Day. And I'm like, if there was ever a saint for robots, it would be the guy who gave them like their laws of robotics and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. We still haven't landed on a few that are like the really classic, really botched adaptations. Like even the one
Doom
or Dune?
Dune. Yes. Doom wasn't a book. There was no book. And then the Hellslayer woke on Mars.
Do you know what? I didn't know his name was
blood-drenched walls.
I didn't know his name was Hellslayer until you just said it. That's how little information.
Sorry. It's not the Hellslayer. He's the Doomslayer.
The Doomslayer.
He's referred to the Hellslayer once or twice, but he's the Doomslayer. That's where the name comes from.
He's Doom guy.
The guy.
Yeah, Doom guy. But like the demons call him the Doomslayer. That's how like he is the demon version of the bogeyman.
They're trying to doom and he's slaying it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's a. I've always heard people complain about like young adult stuff. So between
Twilight and all that stuff.
Twilight, Hunger Games, Maze Runners, anything like Aragon, and what's the one, Golden Compass and all those?
Oh yeah,
His Dark Materials.
Dark Materials. Yeah, they only made one movie out of that.
Did they?
Books because the first one was so bad.
Oh man.
Yeah, polar bears and armor.
Nice.
Yeah.
There's.
But that's the thing. People going about like you mentioned like the bad like young adult stuff. It's like there's also been really good ones. I mean, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is young adult.
Oh yeah.
And those film adaptations were actually quite good. Like for the books, they match the books quite well.
So I'm going to do 4 books or stories that cover everything. They come up again and again and again. So Sherlock Holmes is movies, TV shows, video games.
You stolen one of my things.
Is it Sherlock Holmes? I don't want to talk about that.
It's like 76.
Yeah.
Like 76 novels.
Alice in Wonderland. So Sherlock Holmes, the reason I mention it is because he is the most played character. He is the most character that gets most screen time.
Most adapted,
Him or Dracula, go over and back. But he is, as of now, one of the most adapted character. I've just watched the Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly Sherlock Holmes and Watson trailer, and honestly, it looks really good. I'm totally going to see that. It looks funny. It's going to come out around Christmas. I'm going to watch it.
Speaking of John C. Reilly, have you seen the trailer for the Laurel and Hardy?
No. Oh, I bet he'd be amazing in that.
It's called Stan and what you call it.
Yeah.
It's I'll look it up. I'll get you the exact name. Keep talking.
So Sherlock Holmes is the most played character. Alice in Wonderland is the most adapted story, and I can totally see why anyone with a fucking video camera just wants to do weird, dreamy shit. I want to talk about Heart of Darkness because I think it is spawned the most classic adaptations.
Could probably talk about that in video games.
Yeah.
And
Journey to the West is the Chinese one. It is the equivalent of like they just adapt that everywhere.
Video games as well.
Yeah. Enslaved.
Journey to the West is considered, like, for people who don't know, and I think I mentioned it briefly in the past, it's one of the 3 or 4, I think it's 3 great Chinese literature pieces. It is their version of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And it is I've read a translation of it. It's very good. And strangely enough, now in the last few years, they've kind of come out with a Chinese version of the Foundation series, which is the 3-body problem. If you haven't read those, they're really good sci-fi books. Really good. Like, it's a sci-fi book that nearly takes place entirely on Earth with no sci-fi, but it still manages to be a sci-fi book because of the backdrop.
Nice.
They're making a TV series of that. I think Amazon are making it at the moment. So everybody will hear about that one.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, they got a massive. They signed a deal for it, but it's like it's like $1 billion or something. But yeah, sorry. Stan and Ollie is
Oliver Hardy.
It's coming out end of the month. End of October. So by the time this goes up, it'll be October. So end of the month. Steve Coogan is playing.
Oh, nice.
Stan Laurel and John C. Reilly is Oliver Hardy, and it's about their real life.
But I assume it's a serious movie rather than like a
yes,
play for
yeah.
I've seen John C. Reilly do serious, and I really liked him in what the fuck did I see recently?
John C. Reilly's career was like 6 or 7 years old before he went near comedy, and he was like critical acclaim all over the place. Like, people fucking loved him. Like he's one of the main. He's one of, what's his name's character? Jim Caviezel's character in The Thin Red Line. He's one of his main squad mates.
Oh yeah.
And like he's in The Thin Red Line, and he's one of the more prominent actors in The Thin Red Line for a film that had everybody in it.
Yeah.
And is one of my favorite films, but it's like that's another one that's based on a book, but the book is stream of consciousness more than the film is, because it's very hard to do stream of consciousness film. It's not really related to this though. Like I wouldn't comment, but everybody should have watched that film by now. If you haven't, you're doing yourself a disservice.
It's a great soundtrack.
It's a war film where there's not a single gunshot or explosion for 55 minutes.
Nice.
Do you guys think the movie or book is better of Watchmen?
The book.
Watchmen, obviously.
The book.
But when I came out of the film, with a few of my friends, and one of them turned to me and went, "I give it 3.5 blue dicks out of 5." And then, but one of the other lads said, like, we were always going to end up with an adaptation of this. It could have been a hell of a lot fucking worse.
That is a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
And they tried their best with what they had.
I loved Rorschach. I loved the opening setup where
the music and stuff.
The opening montage
the
and
montage,
the opening sequence where they establish the world where people are doing superhero stuff.
That's great.
It was really nice. It was stylish, but it lost me about halfway through. And some people prefer the ending. I prefer the ending in the book.
I do actually prefer the ending in the movie. I just find it ties it all together really well.
It's clean.
It does. Yeah. It is cleaner.
It is.
I mean, not to spoil
it's
it,
like
but
the rug in the room. Like it just ties
everything together.
Ties it all together.
But
that's the thing. If you look at V for Vendetta as well, V for Vendetta, they reimagined the ending on that, and I love that adaptation. I think the V for Vendetta film is a really good, tight, trimmed adaptation again, because there's a whole side plot in the book, in the graphic novel, where like with the computer and all this type of thing. I don't think it wasn't needed. All of that wasn't needed, and the whole your woman like running away from home and then eventually assassinating one of the members of the party and all this. And it's like it's great for fleshing out and giving the illusion of like demonstrating time passing, but it wasn't needed for the film. And again, in terms of montages, that montage with the dominoes is unreal.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah. Just before we move off movies, I'm going to call this one an adaptation of a book, and the book is History. And Inglourious Bastards, where they shoot Hitler, is the greatest thing I've ever seen. Because it's like, wow, if you're taking liberties with a fucking book, actual history is a great thing to take liberty with. I watched it, I was like, I was watching it, I was thinking about it recently, I was like, I genuinely sat there going, you can't do that. I was like, of course you can.
I went to see Inglourious Bastards when it came out. Myself and my friend Cheddar went to see it. And we arrived at the cinema, and the times, or like the previous showing or something had been, or one of the showings had been cancelled because something had gone wrong, and they had to move screens, and as a result it started. But I think one of the projectors broke down, so it had started at a different time, and we'd missed it because we were looking at the times in the newspaper that my dad bought or something, rather than checking online, because I was living down the country, so online was a myth. And so but we were kind of like, we're at the cinema, is there anything else on? Oh, what's this District 13 thing? I suppose we'll go and see it. And see District 13 came and going, that was fucking unreal.
District 9?
So we went back to, District 9, yeah. District 13 is the French one, sorry.
Yeah.
District 9. And then we came out the next night. We were like, we got the proper times. We came back down to see Inglourious Bastards. And I came out of it kind of going, yeah, I prefer District 9.
Yeah, District 9 is the better
like,
movie.
Seeing the pair of them, I'm just like, I was not impressed by it. But that's the thing, District 9 caught me unawares, and I loved it so much that seeing Inglourious Bastards, which isn't Tarantino's best work, it just made it feel worse.
Yeah. Because
it's like you watch this amazing film immediately before it, and you're like, oh, this is kind of shit.
He's ragging on your thing, dude.
It was. Oh no, I just love that moment where like, because I've watched movies where I know that it's historically inaccurate. I'm watching a movie where I know something didn't happen. I watched Braveheart and I'm like, you know that queen wasn't born when he was fucking around. Like, don't pretend.
You know, he was a lord, right?
So the point where he just shoots Hitler, I'm like, I mean, I've seen movies that take as big a liberty, and I just don't know. I was like, that's brilliant. Yeah. Why not? Cool. Let's do TV shows. Oh no, let's do games next.
Do games.
What was yours, Glennon?
Betrayal of Krondor.
I don't know.
I'm gonna go back a while.
Yeah,
that's an old one.
Betrayal of Krondor was in 1993, and it first came out on I was on like 3.5-inch floppy disks. I think it was on about 8 of them. It was a huge game for its time.
Yeah.
So it's part of a series. So it's in a weird way, it's not an adaptation as such. But the reason why I wanted to mention it was it's part of the Krondor books by Raymond E. Feist.
Yeah.
So probably the only fantasy series that has ever come close, in my opinion, to Lord of the Rings in terms of like detail, enjoyability, scale. Scale is off the charts. Like, but
is that the Magician one?
Yeah.
Okay. How many books were there?
Silver. It's like 30 something at this point. So basically, he wrote a book called Magician,
right?
And he had a rough idea for a sequel and stuff if it was well received, and then he did the 2 sequels, Silverthorn and Darkness of Sethanon. Then the books jump 20 years.
You both could be making up words now.
And I'm making up the same one, so they've got to be true.
Yeah, right. So he jumps 20 years then in the book, right? Because it's a fantasy thing about an invasion and a big war between 2 worlds and all the rest. One world doesn't have metal on it, and the magicians there find a way to open a portal to another planet, and they basically, a big war breaks out and there's an invasion.
Yep.
And it's all about people like involved in that, and this particular like small offshoot branch of the royal family that because of the war suddenly finds themselves being the heads of the royal family,
right? Because
people get killed. Like the first book itself lasts like 8 years, but there's big parts where it jumps many years, where it's like it jumps 2 years because it's like, 2 years later such and such was now older, and this is, the war had stagnated because of blah.
Yeah.
And it does a very good job of keeping all the like lots of characters, keeping it interesting, and you can follow them all. But they did those 3, and then the whole idea is that one of the characters in the first book, who is a member of this small offshoot of the royal family, and you're like, okay, yeah, fine. And then he finds himself being the second most powerful noble in the land. His elder brother becomes the king. He becomes but there's like
Prince Regent.
The land is but the land is split into like 2 countries because there's basically a mountain range split down the middle. So like there's the Eastern Kingdoms, the Western Kingdoms. He becomes the prince of the Western Kingdoms. The king of the Eastern Kingdoms is also the overall king of everything. So he's still a prince, but he's like, he rules half the place with his brother. And it jumps 20 years, and it's about his twin sons then. And the whole idea is that the books follow his bloodline.
So it's a dynasty you're kind of going down through.
Yes. Okay. But it's all set in these 2 worlds, and about like how there is no like lasting solution to the war. They basically end up in a stalemate, and then they have to, there has to be peace brokered and all this type of stuff. And it did huge business in the 80s. It was like when it first appeared, it was a big deal in books and stuff like that.
Right.
And they made this series, Betrayal of Krondor, the book. I'll show you the game. And the whole idea was it was on some of the characters around this prince. And they were filling in what happened in those 20 years. They were like, let's go back and tell one of the stories there, because we have 20 years to play with. We can go back and we can tell a story in a game, and we're not going to interfere with his series that's ongoing. Because the following books literally went, the 4th book was the twin sons. Jump forward 9 years, now it's the other son. Jump forward 12 years, now it's their cousin. And it's like, so it staggers down through the whole thing. So they were like, we got this 20-year gap. They went back and they did a game there. And it's a RPG game. And it was kind of the closest thing you had to an open world RPG. So you would get a chapter, and the chapter would be set in an area of the either the Eastern or Western Kingdoms. And you would have you would be playing. You'd have a party of like 3 or 4 guys, and they would be characters specifically from the books. So they're all like, it wasn't like, oh, you this is happening and you see the guy in the distance. It's like, no, you're playing these characters, and it'll be like, okay, so here's your mission, and it gives you your first mission, and then it's like now we're talking, like I said, 1993. Imagine they gave you 3 or 4 areas in World of Warcraft size.
Yep.
That open, that big, that much variety in missions, and just went, okay, that's a chapter, and we're going to give you 12 chapters.
Nice.
So when we drop you into a map, it's just on you go. and you could either do top down control, 2D top down control, or you could do 3D first person perspective. And it was like,
when did this game come out?
1993.
What Elder Scrolls was the equivalent? Dagger.
There was none out by then. Like Arena was after that, I think, wasn't it?
Was it?
I'm just going to check because the first Elder Scrolls game was Arena was 94.
Okay, so it was around that time.
Much further after.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to picture about what sort of visual fidelity.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking like 300 by 244 or whatever. Yeah. Was the resolution on this thing. But it was like, it didn't actually do that well when it first came out on, like, it didn't sell that well or anything, and it was very hard to get a hold of when it was on floppies.
Yep.
It was re-released later on CDs because that was around the time CD-ROM started to become a thing.
Right.
And when it was re-released on CD, it exploded. And I remember playing it on CD-ROM. I remember my friend getting a CD-ROM, and you had to literally like pull the CD-ROM out of the machine. The top would hinge open. You would put the disc in, close it, and plug it back in. And it was like reloading a cannon or something. And I remember playing it, and I was just like, "This game is insane." It was huge.
Yeah,
and it was mental. Like, but it like, and for its day, they were like, "No, let's just go to town. Let's just do everything." It was so good. Right, it was so well received, and Raymond D. Feist liked it so much. He went back, he adapted the storyline for the game into a book, and then wrote 4 more books that fill in those 20 years following on from the story in that game.
That's pretty good.
So it was kind of this weird thing of like, it was a game inspired by a series of books, which then was adapted back into a book in that series. The game is considered canon.
Amazing.
Like,
that's really cool.
So I think but like, he didn't have any involvement in the writing of the original storyline for the game.
That's really, really cool.
I like that.
Yeah.
I
just wanted to bring that one up.
Yeah.
The books themselves are brilliant. I actually got them all again on the Google books, like Google Play books. I got them all again. They were on sale like last year, and I picked up like the original trilogy, the follow-on 3 books, and then the 2 subsequent trilogies. Because he tends to he'll jump a generation or two, and they go, "Okay, go and do this little group," and then he jumps a bit. Okay, do this little group. And I read through them all, and I was just like, these books still hold up. They're still brilliant. So,
I'm sure I had floppy disk games. I'm sure I had Worms or something where it was on 3 discs. I had disc 1 and 3, and it would just be me going through every single drawer in the house and going, "Aha! Oh, it's a printer. It's a printer driver. Fuck that." Just having all these stacks and stacks of floppies.
Yeah,
man.
What was your games, Lelas?
My game is Stalker.
Oh yes, Shadow of Chernobyl or Shadow of Pripyat.
There's a few of them. I think there might have been 2 or 3 games. I'm big fan of the book Roadside Picnic, which was by the Stragatsky brothers, 2 Russian guys. Basically, the premise is there's been an alien invasion, and when the aliens,
I didn't know that.
The aliens they only came for like a really brief period of time, but they just fucking wrecked the place and left a big area that they called the Zone behind. Which is like kind of like if you think of like what Fallout is like, where it's just radiated to fuck. It leaves mutants behind.
It's very Chernobyl-esque. I genuinely thought it was Chernobyl.
I think in the game, maybe the second game, I think it is, they base it in Chernobyl because there's so many things thematically that match what actually happened in Chernobyl. In the book is not like a big action game, or not a big action thing like the game is. Like the game is like basically a first-person shooter action game with like crazy mutants jumping out at you.
I played a whole bunch of it. Yeah.
The book is really sort of more like about the tension of going into this dark, unknown, irradiated landscape on your own, which is illegal as well, and like people are trying to stop people from getting in. But the reason why people want to go there is the aliens have left artifacts behind, which are like used to overpower technology, which is worth a lot of money. Totally changed the world, like any invasion would, if you can imagine that. The character, his name is Red, at least in the book. I don't know what the guy's name is in the game. His daughter has been really sick because of the radiation in the area. And he's going into the Zone to try and find this thing called the Golden Sphere, which is like this. It's just a MacGuffin, really.
Yeah.
But when he gets in there, he starts sort of changing himself, and it like
That's a bit District
It's
9
really,
as well.
it's really dark. It's a really dark book. He goes in with a friend, and they realize that one of them is going to have to die to basically unlock this thing, and it's all about the two of those characters trying to figure out which one of them is going to get out and which one is going to stay behind. It's really dark, and the book is so different to the game. I thought it would be worth mentioning, because if people find the idea of that interesting, they could check out the game, which is pretty good. But the book is just so harrowing, but it's really, really, really interesting.
The game I played actually did what you just described of it being really dark and like unknown and like the fear of just like the place is fucked up and I guess we just figure out how to start again. I was playing Stalker, Shadow of Pripyat. It's either Shadow of Pripyat or Shadow of Chernobyl.
Shadow of Chernobyl.
Thank you. And thank you, voice in my head. But it started, and it's a Russian game, I think, and it is very difficult. And if you kill a character, that character's dead. If he had shit for you, that shit's gone. Everything is permadeath. Everything is really, really kind of destructive and horrible. And the controls aren't 100% great, which add to it. I've had this discussion with people before, but like Resident Evil 1, if they completely fix. If you could absolutely just run everything and had perfect camera angles, it wouldn't be a scary game. Having to grapple with the controls a little bit. And I remember genuinely feeling like I had to survive moment to moment. Genuinely feel like I could walk into a town, but I could be like shot if I crossed someone the wrong way. And I remember going into towns and making friends with people and like doing stuff. And there was this really weird moment. And then like eventually getting into the sewers and doing all this weird stuff. But there was a weird moment where I went to approach a military base and they just started shooting at me. They were like, no, absolutely not. You don't get to come in. And I was like, okay. I just backed off. I was like, that's it. They didn't even say hello. They just, like, I've never met these guys. So I eventually stole a car, drove into the military base, did a huge donut in the middle, and drove out again. And they started following me. But they didn't just on foot like NPCs follow. They got into cars, got into vans, and drove after me. I drove back into a friendly town that I knew was cool, parked my car, and disappeared off into a house, and got into the attic and just looked out and watched the townsfolk just light up this military van. And I was like, this is it. This is how I'm going to get all their stuff. I'm going to fucking steal this. The military were completely like outclassed the town. Like they had the better weapons, the better armor, everything, and just started going house to house and murdering people. And I had to hide in an attic and like stalk around.
Into Anne Frank.
Just basically. And frankly, I thought it was a weird situation. But I genuinely, and then like eventually they packed up and went, and I went, oh, I expected to kill the military guys and get their cool guns, but now what I have is a ghost town where I can just go house to house and take whatever people had. And I was like, okay, this is who I am. I am just looting now.
I'm surprised that. Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
No, you're going.
I was just gonna say, like the game is really good. The book is even better. I'm surprised this hasn't become a bigger thing, like a movie or a TV series or something. It's like not a lot of people know about this one, and it's.
I'd expect people to talk about this in the same way they talk about like Dead Souls or something. Like it's that intense of a game. And then when I got into the sewers and first started meeting mutants, they are terrifying. And there's one that distorts your camera. So as you're looking at it, you start getting tunnel vision and your camera zooms way in. And it means that you feel like you're looking down a scope, even if you turn your head and look around.
It's so hard to turn and move.
And you try to find the ladder that you just came down into the sewers with when you're basically looking through a scope. And then it starts coming towards you and you can hear it, but you can't find it again.
Oh, shit.
Not because it's invisible, because you can't fucking see where it was. So good.
Yeah, there's a game that I play at the moment that some of the devs from Stalker worked on.
Oh, Escape from New York.
Escape from Tarkov.
Thank you.
And that's another, like, it's a...
That makes sense.
There is some unspecified disaster in this Russian city and you're a member of a PMC and you're kind of stranded there.
Yeah.
And you basically have to try and get by, but it involves like going into these areas that are just overrun with local lunatics, and it's every man for themselves, and it's like an ultra realistic shooter. There is no heads up display, there is no crosshair on the screen. You can mod your weapons with, like, you can literally strip a weapon and rebuild it with new parts. You can, like, it's like, oh cool, you got 7.62 ammo and you want to use this AK. It's not the right type of 7.62 ammo, so that's not going to work. Like, you're going to have to get the right one, and it's like, it is ultra realistic, and it's done by the same guys, like or some of the same guys.
That makes sense.
And yes, that whole feeling of like being fully outclassed by the military is definitely a thing, because sometimes you'll go into a map and there's like 2 or 3 guys rocking around in full combat gear and full bulletproof gear, and like they're tooled up to the hilt, and you're just like, I'm dead no matter what happens. and sometimes I am one of those guys with my mates just rocking around, like just like clearing places out, but it could all go horribly wrong. One guy gets lucky with a shotgun, you're just dead.
Oh yeah.
So it's it seems to be a thing, and it's quite popular with like Russian this like kind of small group of Russian game developers, where I think it was popularized. I know you were saying like Stalker, you're kind of surprised it hasn't been a bigger thing. It's had quite an impact in Russia, it seems, in that it has steered the development of a lot of further games where they go for this ultra realistic, super hardcore game type, because all these people grew up playing Stalker and being like, because Stalker was championed as, this was made here, this is one of our games, and it's based on one of our books, and it's like, so yeah, it's definitely, you can see the trickle down in Russian games. So
cool.
Yeah, I like it. For games for me, first of all, I kind of want to just do a shout out to anyone who translates a game, because I know it's not quite the same as an adaptation, but so many of our games come from Japan and come from even Russia, as you're saying there, and come from countries where, like, I am so addicted to all these Konami games and all, like everything, where the stories really resonate with me, and I was like, somebody had to sit down and figure out what the fuck Metal Gear Solid was about and translate into English and have it still make sense and all this kind of stuff.
It didn't make sense in Japanese.
Well, this is
talking about.
So, like,
I don't think that will ever make sense.
No. Oh, that's a weird series. I'm trying not to say Silent Hill. That's why I said Resident Evil earlier as well.
It's like looking at you right there.
I know.
There's so much Silent Hill stuff here.
Yeah, there really is. I'll have to do a spin around at some stage. Sure. But just the fact that people translate all this stuff and it is still like, it becomes such a perfect game in English is, to me, an adaptation, and we should absolutely celebrate those people.
Having worked with translators, I'll just like ruin your illusion a little by telling you that they tend to just ask a lot of questions.
Really?
To the people who supply the actual source material. To the point of like having hundreds and hundreds of queries of what gender is this character, all that stuff comes in, and like you'll see thousands and thousands of questions just come through every month.
I've heard a story where for Spirited Away, maybe not Spirited Away, definitely a Studio Ghibli movie, there's a character who coughs, and what comes out of their mouth is a metal thing for putting on a letter, stamp, and a little black slug that scurries away. And the translation was, a seal came out of her mouth. And everyone stared at it and went, is this the seal? As in like the stamp? Or was the seal the little black thing? And they went, it's probably the little black thing, like the little creature. They'd be more concerned about that. So they kept going, assuming that everyone was trying to catch this black seal for ages. And then they had to ask and be like, actually, what are we talking about here?
There's I worked back in 2008. I worked in a studio in 2008, 2009. I worked in a studio in Barcelona, that was taking Eastern made games, Korean made games, localizing them and distributing them into Europe. And we would get the games, and they'd been translated from Korean to English by someone whose English was like a second language and probably they weren't fluent in.
Yep.
And then I'd have to go through the entire game and like fix all that. And I remember there was one quest where the quest was like, go get me 3 vials of bear blood and 2 vials of snake venom and stuff like this. But the translation from Korean to English, when I got it, it was like, bring me 2 vials of bear bodily fluid and 2 vials of snake bodily fluid. And I'm like, what kind of quest is this?
It was like, snake bodily fluid, you say? Liquid snake is back.
It was definitely a thing that was like, well, this is odd. This is not something I expected to be doing.
Actually, one of my favorite stories about this is we knew people who worked in Vivendi translating games, and one of the games was Metal Arms, where you played 2 little robots running around.
I remember this.
And during the tutorial mission, you are teamed up with 2 other robots called Screwed and Bolted, which are very good names for robots. Fantastic. And then at one point, a pylon falls, a big radio antenna falls, and crushes Screwed, and Bolted runs away. And that's the joke. Yeah. Screwed and Bolted, yay.
Well done.
And when they were translated into German, their names became Fucked and Pussy. Because it was like, oh, this dude's fucked and that dude was a pussy. They're like, how did you... What the fuck? Or like the German equivalent of those words. But you're like, how did you get that far? It's like, Screwed and Bolted, yeah? Hey, funny joke. It's like, no, you don't get to say that.
There's no such thing as humor there.
Yeah. It's all or nothing. Cool. My going through games, sticking with the kind of Sherlock Holmes and Alice in Wonderland vibe. I loved American McGee's Alice. I think that was fantastic. There are so many people who try to do sequels to the Alice in Wonderland story rather than...
Is it like a thing that you have to mention that every episode?
American McGee's Alice?
Yeah,
does that come up a lot?
I think so. I don't know.
It's really good.
No,
anyway.
We've only mentioned it 2 or 3 times. And at least one of those times, we mocked the fact that his sister was missing.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, I really love that. But it is... I've seen movies as well where they're like, we're going to do a dark version of Alice in Wonderland. We're like... Return to Wonderland, like everything is going to be crazy and dark, and like now she was a kid when she went in, but now she's a teenager and it's all angsty. I've seen that a bunch of times. I loved Alice in Wonderland when I was growing up, to the point that I even watched the porno, Alice's Erotic Adventures in Wonderland. It's very good. There's a musical number. And
is she playing a flute?
And I'm pretty sure Tweedledee and Tweedledum have sex. But it was done as like a light-hearted, campy 60s.
Hang on, what age were you when you saw this?
Probably 20. Like I had to torrent it. I had to find it and download it and all this. But I've looked it up since then because the production value was weirdly high, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like it starts in the real world and does the whole down the rabbit hole, so to speak, does the whole entering Wonderland. It's not just like random like shots of things. But apparently the guys, when they distributed it, they got this campy, fairly softcore porn, but then they decided they were going to distribute it as a hardcore, so they just cut in hardcore porn at various places. So there's bits where like, oh, fun, a musical number, and then it gets really fucking dank, and I'm like, what? Oh shit! And then back to the story.
Is it not really weird with the music where it's like la 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 la, as it just switches between them, and it's like it's going from like orchestral to like a funk guitar. And you're like, something's not right here.
I swear to God, there's a bit where like it's the Mad Hatter doing something, and he stands up to reveal he's like not wearing trousers, and then it cuts to like a blowjob scene where everyone's skin tone has changed, and you're like, they just genuinely spliced in anything.
Spliced it in Power Ranger style.
Yeah. Man, that was a weird one. Anyway, there is a game called Sherlock Holmes Nemesis, and it is one of the worst fucking games ever made. And it's so bad, and it's this not quite point and click adventure, but it's you go around and try and solve puzzles. But it was so cheaply done. They were just relying on the name of the Sherlock Holmes brand and stuff to probably the 2000s. I wonder if it was around like,
was it like maybe
Sherlock Holmes Nemesis.
Yeah, it actually had another name, but it was UK and Northern America as Nemesis.
It's on Steam. Hang on, I'll tell you now.
Anyway, I'll continue going with the
2008.
Was it 2008?
It's not that long ago.
That's what it's telling me.
That's astounding, because
maybe it just came out on PC then.
Sherlock Holmes versus Arsène Lupin.
That's it. That's the name of it. And then in North America it was Nemesis, and it was so cheaply done that they didn't give Watson a walk animation. So Watson was beside you, and you could ask him questions.
He just like sort of
no. But he would, if you were looking at him, he wouldn't move. He would just stay completely still. And the idea is, there's a scene where like you're going around an art gallery and you've got this whole building you can go through, and if you look at Watson and then look away and then look back, he'll have just stepped closer. He's basically the weeping angels from that one Doctor Who episode. But there's a whole guy who's put like creepy music to it and has a YouTube video, look up Creepy Watson, where he just, it's him, and when he goes out of sight, but there's a bit where he goes behind a pillar and then steps back out and Watson's gone because he was out of sight for a second, and then turns around and Watson's right beside him, and they do a big musical sting, and it's so creepy. And it's just...
Now hang on, there's something odd about this, right? So that one, Sherlock Holmes versus Arsène Lupin.
Yep.
That's the 4th Sherlock Holmes game in 5 years that studio did.
And the next one was
So
then
they
versus
already
Jack
had
the Ripper.
they already had walk cycles.
Yeah, look, the video exists. I have looked it up. I don't know what the fuck was wrong, but maybe the characters didn't walk around. It is infamous online for
They've also done 3 more Sherlock Holmes games since then, and I've seen the most 2 recent ones that are actually like, people are like, yeah, they're not that bad, and they're the guys that are doing that Sinking City game.
Is that right? Wow, they've come a long way.
Actually, I looked them up, right, and I'm not joking. They're called Frogwares, and it's like, Frogwares is an independent Ukrainian video game development studio headquartered in Kiev with subsidiary offices in Dublin.
Oh, lovely. Oh, I'll call over and see what the fuck they were doing in 2008. But
report back on that.
It is, look up Creepy Watson. It is one of the like, maybe they're just like, it's a puzzle game. You just need to turn to Watson to ask him questions every so often. We'll just have him always beside you, like a floating fucking robot in a Fallout or something. Just this thing that's always there. He's basically your inventory. We'll just use him as like this, like, it's nearly like the way they have Pikachu follow you in Pokemon. It's just fucking set dressing. Don't worry about it. But it's so creepy the way it's done.
It's mad.
Cool.
Sorry, I just have this mental image that Watson is named Pikachu.
He's got the little tail bobbing.
Sherlock Holmes. Watson.
Watson, use cut. He's just hacking with
He's
a
just
cane.
saying his own name over again. John Watson.
Fantastic. What was your game option?
I mentioned it already.
What did you use?
Stalker.
We're done. Fantastic.
TV.
I'll do a shout out to Spec Ops: The Line then. We all played Spec Ops: The Line.
Yes.
It is
Heart of Darkness, the game.
terrifically good Heart of Darkness, to the point that the guy you're trying to find is called Colonel Conrad.
Oh, nice.
Is he?
That's very
So
good.
that's so there. It is 100% Heart of Darkness, and like obviously Apocalypse Now is the film adaptation of it. Man, that seems to be like, we just need the TV adaptation now, and that to be one of the greatest things ever as well.
Yeah. Big time.
Cool.
A little shout out to Discworld as well.
Oh yeah.
There was, I think, 3 games. There was 2 2D ones and 1 sort of 3D one. A long time ago, like at least 20 years ago. The games were point-and-click adventures, kind of like
The LucasArts
Monkey
kind of,
Island,
yeah.
all those kind of games. They're pretty funny. I mean, the puzzles were stupid to the point like some of the things were so random that you would never guess them.
I miss games where you had to wait till you went into school the next day and actually have a little quorum
That was a thing.
to figure out what the fuck.
Yeah.
You get a mirror and you gotta breathe on the mirror.
Remember, there was one thing where you had to catch a butterfly or something in order to distract a chef to steal his frying pan and then go back in time to catch his pancake with that same frying pan.
Of course, why not?
I was like, what the hell is going on? But the Discworld books are just amazing. Terry Pratchett, probably the funniest books ever.
Oh yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, the Pratchett books are
Unbelievable.
Yeah, they're definitely a thing.
Yeah.
We've mentioned those, I don't know how many times on
Cool. Good.
On the channel here, so gotta get Johnny to start reading them properly though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because half the time I mention them and he's like, okay.
I've read all the Guards ones, I think.
they're my favorite ones.
Yeah. I think those were recommended to me. Although what I think I need to do is find out all the ones that have religion as a theme and just go through that instead, because they have a line in one of the Guards books where it's like, there's a guy walking through the desert. He was like, no wonder all the religions start in the desert. There's nothing out here. Your mind just has to wander. And I was like, that is such a good line. Oh my god, I really want to see what you think of religion.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Watch God's pretty good as well. There's he did one called Pyramids, which is basically like, it's kind of removed from all the other stories in a weird way, but it still happens in the Discworld. But it follows some like kind of odd stuff. But that kind of explains how religion works in that universe. That'd be the most succinct one. Other than that, though, I'd say get the Death books. The Death ones are fantastic.
They've been recommended.
Really good,
Yeah.
Mort and all them.
Yeah.
Did I read more? Anyway,
The music one's really good. Soul music.
I've heard that. Yeah. Cool. We'll do TV shows.
Yeah.
Do you want me to kick off?
Go for it.
There's a notable trope here, but it's not for books. It's just one that I, again, was reading stuff before this. There's death by adaptation, where in the book, a character survives, a character things, but then when you adapt to a TV show or adapt to a movie, you kill a character just to be like, ooh, nothing's safe. Like like they do it in The Walking Dead. They're like, hey, I know how this is going to go. I read the comics. And then, boof, we kill a guy and like, he wasn't supposed to die.
Right.
And the one that always gets me is X-Men, where they kill Cyclops, just being like, poof. And I was like, I'm pretty sure he was supposed to be around. I was like, yeah, the actors come to do something else. Oh, okay.
It's fine. No one likes Cyclops, so
James
no one
Marsters,
cares.
yeah. That poor
but
dude.
it's like it's not his fault. I mean, like, he's good in Westworld.
He's good. He's still like, fucking lamentable. Like, as a person, every character they give him, they're like, so you're going to be fucked over at some point, and everyone's going to be like, this poor lad.
yeah. It's like, and for the longest time in the Avengers, it was like, no one likes Captain America. We can fuck him over. And then Chris Evans came along, and they're like, it's really likable now. God, this is fucking awkward. So,
but they apparently in the Lethal Weapon TV show, they've just killed Riggs.
What?
And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? I was like, I was never going to watch it anyway, but what the fuck are you doing?
She probably just killed the show.
Yeah, at this stage.
That's
sorry, before we move off video games, I really am enjoying the fact that when you adapt something to a video game, you lose all control over the characters. So characters who have a no-killing policy, like Batman and Spider-Man, you just see them murdering people.
Batman doesn't murder anybody in these games.
Yeah.
They all get knocked out.
The
Batmobile has electric bumpers, electrified bumpers that stun people. Yeah. They stun them at 60 mile an hour into the side of a building, but they still stun them.
I can stun people into a fountain where they land face down. Just sit and watch. Or in Spider-Man, you can web people to the side of a vehicle and then go over and flip the vehicle onto the people. Like, you can do such bad shit. I'm gonna steal your one for TV shows.
I don't think you are.
All right, House.
No.
Okay, you were saying something about Sherlock Holmes earlier.
Yeah.
So I genuinely just love House as the whole Sherlock Holmes stories with him as Holmes and Wilson as Dr. Watson. I just think that it is a weird what they got right, because obviously none of the cases are the same. They're not doing the Sherlock BBC series where they adapt each case or each book into an episode, but they're sticking so true to the characters, and the fact that House is kind of all over the place and is addicted to painkillers and has all these things wrong with him and can sit down and play piano and do all this stuff, but does it to amuse himself more than so to show off. Like when he's doing bad shit, even when he's doing it to annoy Cuddy, but in the books he only ever plays violin when he's thinking. He only ever does these things when it's like he needs a distraction. And Watson comments on it saying like he would be a fantastic violinist, but he only does it like to have something to do with his hands. And the idea that House is this character that he's just needs to be doing something. He's so insanely smart that he has to be fucking entertaining himself, even if it's destructive. And that kind of holds true. So the characters come across quite well in that instance. I'll also give a shout out to Sex and the City, which started as a column in the New York Observer, and I think was adapted neatly into
that. I remember watching that pilot because people were making a big deal.
Which
about
House
it,
or Sex and the City?
Sex and the City, because people were making a big deal about it before I saw it, and it was like,
was it just because it had sex in the name?
I like cities myself
because it's a HBO series.
Yep.
And like HBO prior to that had done like fucking Oz and stuff like this. And I'm like, okay, and they're doing some new one and people are raving about it. Okay, cool. Let's see what it's like. And I'm like, I'm expecting it to be some like, I don't know if in my head I was like, this is gonna be some sort of.
You thought it was like
single wife
Homicide, Sex in the City, like just
no. It was like I thought of it like look at the names of like The Wire. That does not sound interesting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oz. I was just like, the name isn't the thing. It's like they pick a name that doesn't sound like anything else.
Yeah.
That's currently on TV, and then they tell a very good story. So I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, the fuck is this tripe? You sure?
Sex in the City was amazing. Maybe the pilot wasn't great, but I watched so much Sex in the City. I'm a Miranda.
How long did it go for?
Per man's Will and Grace. Per man's Will and Grace.
Will and Grace was great as well. Don't make me choose.
Where am I? What is this podcast?
No, Sex and the City was amazing, and it is the absolute commodity fetishism. I've never seen it to such a high degree. The idea that they would do an entire episode about a pair of shoes that was taken by mistake because everyone went to a party and they had to take their shoes off, and then when they went to leave, somebody had worn Carrie's shoes out, and like they knock a whole episode out of that, and I was so drawn in. I was like, how do these people live It must be the equivalent. I have friends from Russia and they watch the Late Late Toy Show with me and they're like, what is this? Why would you give children all these toys? It will spoil them. This is the worst. I was like, and I can take them home. Oh, such decadence. That's why I watched Sex and the City. I was like, look at this woman paying $2,000 for a pair of things you wear on your feet. That's where I put feet though. That's where I watch her mud.
To be fair, a former guest of this podcast, Helmet, the guy who does the music, has said, he said to me once, he turned to me once, we were just like DJing one night, and he goes, there's 3 things you should never skimp on. And I'm like, right. And he's like, your runners, and he's like, your footwear, your mattress, and your toilet roll. And I was like, that makes sense, because that pretty much encompasses pretty much all your life.
Yeah.
And like, you will spend all your life
you're not on your feet, you're lying in bed. If you're not on your feet lying in bed, you might be on the shitter.
There you go.
Shout out to Helmet and his all black Doc Martens that he bought recently and was super happy with.
Yeah, he didn't realize you could get them, and then he found out. He's like, ooh, spicy.
Yeah.
The strangest things entertain that man. It's fantastic.
I love him. So there you go. It was House and Sex and the City. It was fine.
Nice. Fair enough. What's your TV, Lelas?
I was gonna say Sherlock, the BBC Sherlock, the Hermitage Bubble Snatch thing.
Benadryl Cabbage
Patch. We've kind of talked about that quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it is the most adapted character.
The thing I will say about that one is, it starts very well. The first season, maybe 2 seasons, are really, really good, and then they kind of go a little bit crazy with the Mary Marsden character, who's like this secret agent all of a sudden, and they go off on wild tangents and stupid stuff starts happening, and Holmes goes into a mind palace, and you're like, what the fuck is this?
Would you say that's close to the books?
No, not at all. Like,
I think it was. I think
there's no mind.
It is. The mind palace thing is.
The mind palace is not in the books.
There's a mind palace.
He has
thing.
a mind palace in the books.
Oh shit! Was it in a different book?
There
might have been something I was reading.
From my experience reading the books, there's no mind palace in the books anyway. I could be wrong about that, but as far as I know, there's none of that there. If anybody's seen the 4th season where he has the fight on the waterfall, that's a bit stupid.
That's out of the books.
It's not the same though. They totally cheese it up in the
Rockefeller
show.
Falls, the Rickenbacker Falls,
they
the Knickerbocker Falls,
the Reichenbach Falls.
I just feel like that show totally runs off a cliff.
I think Arthur Conan Doyle was running out of shit at the end of his.
He even said, he says that himself. He wanted to quit writing it, and he tries to kill off Sherlock Holmes, and it had to bring him back.
He, towards the end, started going so wacky with it that he actually forgot some of the things he'd already established and had completely random shit just start happening. And it was things like, was Watson married or not, or was like all this stuff. But like, he had fans writing to him going, "Are you all right?" He's like, "I just don't care." And like, okay.
He wrote he wrote 70 odd books, like so.
Yeah. Like a lot of the early short stories are amazing, way better than any of the adaptations, in my opinion. The first
they're more concise.
Books, like there's 4 novels. The first 2 are amazing. The Hound of the Baskervilles is pretty good. It's very different.
Yeah. Yes, which is why I like that the TV show did a different style. They went.
I actually like their adaptation of it a lot.
Yeah,
and I think it's at that point that's like about as good as that show got, and then it started going a little bit.
So I hate Doctor Who, and my fear is that they're going to start trending towards Doctor Who with weird stuff happening, like this cool guy who can solve anything. The idea that someone can take something out of their pocket and go, "Hey, it's a piece of card that can be anything I want, and it's a screwdriver that does anything." And I'm like, why the fuck do we have a story? What are you doing? This is ridiculous.
I liked Doctor Who growing up, and I've hated it since the reboot. And it's not the hipster thing. It's just like, I know how much money they put into that series.
It still looks like shite.
And it still looks like dog shit.
Yeah.
Whereas the original ones, they made it on a shoestring. And they put in, like, people poured their heart and soul into making those things. And the originals, I remember, like, just watching them growing up and loving them. And then they go back and they're like, oh, we're going to do it. And it's like, there's the odd episode where I'll try and watch it. And every time the new Doctor comes around, I'm like, maybe I didn't like the character. Maybe I didn't like the actor. Maybe it just didn't gel for me. And I thought Capaldi would be the one to get me on board because I love In the Thick of It and stuff like that. And I'm watching it and I'm like, well, he's not saying cunt, but I mean, that's more of
good or bad. He hasn't said horsecock in minutes.
Yeah, and I'm just like, no, it's because they try and make it look cheap on purpose. And I'm like, that's not what the original was about. The original, like, it seems like a drastic misinterpretation of like, oh, we're going to keep this element because it's what the original was known for, and it's like, no, it was just a byproduct of the budget and stuff. Don't be focusing on that shit. Like. So,
my backup one was also BBC adaptation. It was a thing called Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell.
Oh yes, I watched all that.
It's not bad.
It's fucking good. Dennis Pennis shows up. I don't know the dude's actual name. Dennis, whatever his name was. The shock journalist, radio DJ. What the fuck he was? He would like stop celebrities and ask them really horrible questions. He was like an Ali G kind of character.
Okay, right, fair enough.
From the 90s. He shows up in it as the mad soothsayer kind of dude, and with covered in tattoos. He's fucking amazing. I remember being such.
Paul K.
Oh, is it? I'm sure his name was going to be something. But he shows up. Man, I was really impressed by that show.
That show it's not bad, like not bad at all. The book is absolutely amazing.
Is it?
It's a fucking huge book.
He's
big, but it's you'll read it really quickly as well. It's like maybe 1,000 pages. It's all about magicians. There's like
magic returns to the world.
There's one guy who's like the master magician, and it's how he does all of his illusions and tricks. And one younger magician figures out that he's in league with a fairy. And the fairy is the one who's doing all the magic, and this other guy's kind of a con artist. But then they realize that they can do stuff themselves, and it's all about their relationship. And the book's brilliant. Like, it's really, really good. Not worth a look.
I'm very impressed in the TV show that they have like these long elements of Pride and Prejudice, of this kind of feeling like somebody's been doing magic, so they shut her away, or they shut characters away, where they're like, well, it's just not done. And like, it's like there's social element to it, of like, oh, it's freakish what he's doing, and they lock them away, and you're like, you're so prudish, it's just magic. You do it. I really like that show. It was really good.
Yeah, no, the show's pretty
and
good.
it's wrapped up quite well. Like, it was never going to go on longer. What is it, 2 or 3 seasons? 2 seasons?
No, I think it's only 1. There's like 7 or 8 episodes, and I don't know if I got to the end of it, but spoilers, obviously. Does it end with them kind of going off into the magical realm thing, like, or
no? That's Legend of Korra.
Okay, well, spoilers obviously for the book then, because that's how it ends in the book.
Okay, no, it I won't say it is actually really good, but it ramps up to their rivalry ramps up and up and up.
Yeah. That's how it goes in the book, kind of, as well. Cool. Recommend it.
It's a good shape.
Yeah.
Fair enough. It's not one I've heard of, but okay.
No, it is really good.
Just something just occurred to me though while you were when you mentioned it there, the BBC version of Sherlock, and like you're saying, the start of that, like it is very well done at the start, to the point where it made me actually be able to watch something that has Benedict Cumberbatch in it.
I like him.
Do you not like him? I think he's fantastic when he's being interviewed.
Yeah,
I love him when you see him on talk shows. He is so witty and erudite, and like he's the perfect like guest. I think he'd be very good if he had his own show and he was interviewing people and all the rest. He has like 2 facial expressions.
Yeah,
he went to the Tobey Maguire school of facial expressions. He has 2, and that's it.
I think,
and one of them looks like he just shit his pants. It's like, and that's you know, I mean, that's why like he's in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. And he's the only thing that I don't like about that film. I fucking adore that film, and I know a lot of people are kind of like, it's weird, it's a bit slow moving, and it's, you know, it's a very like slow film, and again, it's another one based on book and stuff like that. But it was like, I remember watching there was an adaptation of it years ago, and read the book, and this is a phenomenal like film version of it. But why the fuck is he in it? Yeah, it just annoyed me, like, you know. But there's a thing where and we also mentioned Terry Pratchett, and I remember seeing an image that went up. I'll stick it up actually on the Dystropia page before, probably like tomorrow before the episode goes up.
Yeah,
this is like a teaser, but it's like someone's taken the bit from the end of the first episode of Sherlock, where with the taxi driver.
Yeah,
and it's the line from Men at Arms. Veterinary says it. The guy who runs
the patrician guy.
Yeah, the patrician. He runs Ankh-Morpork, the main city.
Yeah.
And he's like, as far as I know, it's either his line or it's said by him or it's said to him or something like that. But it's someone describes him as like, someone says like, you're a bad man, and he's like, oh, you're an evil man. And he goes, well, that's all you could ask for. And they were like, why? And he's like, if you have to look along the shaft of an arrow from the wrong end, if a man has you at his mercy, then hope like hell he's an evil man, because the evil like power over people, power over people, and they want to see you in fear. They want you to know that you're going to die. And they'll talk and they'll gloat and they'll put off the murder like another man will put off a good cigar. So hope like hell your captor is an evil man. A good man will kill you with hardly a word. And it's set over the scene from the thing where the taxi driver's there and blah blah blah. And as soon as Watson sees him, he just blows him away. Nice. And it's that whole thing of like, it's a good man will kill you with hardly a word. And I love that line. And it's like Terry Pratchett's writing is so strong in those books. Like they're comedy. But like there's moments in those books where he writes something and it's like, it's genuinely, it's like, that is the greatest summation of that particular point I'd ever read. And it's weird. It's one of those things of, I've read nearly all all of the Discworld books, and I'm like, I think just 2 I haven't. And like, I don't know if I want to read them because I always like the idea of that there's still more.
Yeah. I totally see that.
And it's like,
I have not watched the last episode of the most recent Twin Peaks because they said, "Oh, we might make more," and I was like, I just want to keep one. And as soon as he does make more, I'll watch that last one. But I'm like, I can't. I have to know that there's some. I have to know there's some in the future. What is it? This sentence was billions of years in your future until you heard it. Now it's in the past.
Well, yeah.
Okay, yeah. My own TV show adaptation was a recent one. It's only from this year. It's Altered Carbon.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
I haven't watched it yet. Love the book though.
So the book is incredible. Yeah. The book is like,
I'll set this one out.
Takeshi Kovacs.
Takeshi Kovacs. Yeah. A Japanese guy played by a white guy that's not whitewashing.
Yes. And it makes sense.
And it makes sense in the story.
Swaps bodies.
But then again, as I've said, as we've gone down that road on this podcast, it made sense when Scarlett Johansson did it. It's just people got mad without actually listening to the fucking creator of Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah.
It's bold.
But yeah, the book was in 2002.
Is it that?
Yeah, it was 2002 because it won the Philip K. Dick Award in 2003.
Right. Okay.
So it must have come out the year before. And
there was a few books, right? There was Woken Furies, and I think there's another one. There's at least 3, isn't there?
There's 3, yeah, but this is the first one. And I remember one of my friends telling me about it. He was like, "Oh, I was reading this book," and I'm like, "Oh," I was like, I think he was reading it like 2004 or something. And I remember him telling me about it. I was like, "Holy shit, that sounds unreal!" Like, and I picked it up that day and I read it on the bus home, and I was like, I pretty much got home that evening, had my dinner, and I just sat in my sitting room and just read. I didn't turn on the TV. I was just like reading, and like someone came in at one point like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, just reading a book," and just zoned out and just was like hooked on it. So it's like it's set like 300 and something odd years in the future for the most part. There's some parts that are like flashback style, but when they flash back, they're flashing back to like maybe 100 years in the future, 150 years. And the whole idea is that mankind has discovered this technology, alien technology, that allows them to essentially, you get this thing called a stack installed at the base of your skull, and your personality and all that is in there. It's stored in there. And if you die, they can take that out and plug it into a new body and wake you up. As long as the stack is intact, you can keep going.
So you got a black box.
Essentially, but what it does is it's a way for them to circumvent intergalactic travel, because traveling takes years. So the whole idea is that they can beam your signal from one location to another, and you arrive there instantaneously, and then they sleeve you into a new body. So it's used by say like business people. I have an office on Earth. I have an office on some planet that's like 4 years journey away. I get beamed there. I sleeve into this other body. I do my business. I go back, and then I get beamed back into my original body. And normally what happens to people is that when they get beamed, they come out of it and they're sick. It's sleeve sickness, and you're basically fucked for like 24 hours or something like this. Or I think it's 24 hours in the book, and then in the TV series it's like a couple of hours. It's not as bad.
Just keep it moving.
Unless, yeah. and it's only if they sleeve you into your original body that like it doesn't affect you as much. But there's these group of people called envoys who are trained that as soon as they sleeve into a body, they are ready. They are 100% ready to go, and they are combat trained. And they essentially try and there's a big like revolution involving them, and they become this guerrilla company and all the rest, and they're all wiped out except for this one guy, Takeshi Kovacs, and he's killed. So what they do is they have his stack and they never plug it in again. So like when you get sent down for life, you are eternally in this state.
So are you in a Pokeball? Are you in the ghost unit from
almost.
Ghostbusters? Like, are you conscious?
It's a little cartridge. Yeah, well, no, you can dream.
Oh.
It's hinted that you can dream, but they don't specifically say, from what I can remember in the books. It's been like 10 years since I read them.
Right.
But it's and they hint at it in the TV series as well, that there's like, you know, there's a sensation of, you know, it wasn't just at the moment I died is where it cut off and then it started again when I woke up. There was a moment of something in between, but they can't remember what. It's not really, you know, explored. But the whole idea is that he's woken back up because there's this guy, he's known as a Methuselah. See, someone who's basically an ultra rich person who can live forever, because they've discovered that if they clone their own bodies and you sleeve yourself back into it, there's no degradation.
Oh, nice.
If I jump sleeve 6 or 7 times, I'll eventually start to go insane. But if I keep sleeving back into my own body, I'm fine. And the whole idea is that if the ultra riches never die, because they just pay for backups.
Yep.
And then if they die, they just like, yeah, cool. We'll plug you back into your next body. We'll defrost it, and on you go. And there's
I love that.
one guy is like, one of them is like, I got killed. And they're like, well, why didn't you just like boot up and tell people who killed you? Like, because you'll have all your memories. And he's like, they destroyed my stack, but I have it backed up once a day. So I lost like 20 hours or 23 hours of what was happening. So I need you to find out what's happened. And if you do, I'll pay for I have the authority to get you free. And he doesn't, to begin with, he does not want to be part of it. He's like, no, everyone I cared about is dead.
Yep.
Like, because he wakes up after 250 years. He's like, everyone I cared about is dead.
Yeah.
People think I'm a myth. Anyone who's like, you know, but this guy is like, he's a combat monster. He will take you apart in a heartbeat. Like,
a little bit of Jason Bourne, a little bit of Demolition Man. I'm liking it.
That's pretty much like. And in the TV series played by Joel Kinnaman, the guy who played RoboCop in the RoboCop reboot.
I like him. I liked him in The Killing.
Yeah, in The Killing as well. He's very good in this. And it has got ridiculous amounts of violence, but it's the whole thing in it where, like, because it's a whole thing of, but these people aren't dying.
Yes, of course.
You know what I mean? Like, we can just re-sleeve them. And there's a
the amount of pranks you could do if you, like, I know this is going to be completely relevant. But you know the way you could push people into a swimming pool before mobile phones, and they could just get wet and it's fine. It seems like the opposite way around. Now you can't because they've destroyed their phone. It's like, now you can totally prank people by shooting yourself in the head. Because you're like, you got covered in blood. All right, re-sleeve me real quick.
There's basically a thing where, like, some of the characters in it are pretty good. Like, there's a thing where there's hotels in the future that are run by an AI. And the AI are set up that once you register as a guest in the hotel, for all intents and purposes, the hotel falls in love with you and is completely infatuated with you. And they will do anything and everything to make sure that you are happy, that you're protected and everything. And the hotel he goes to, most people don't stay in them because they think they're creepy and it's like an outdated thing. They were like a fad 50 or 60 years before he was plugged back in. But he goes and stays there because he just wants to be left alone. And the one he's staying at is that's like the Crow or something like that it's called. But it's the avatar of the hotel is essentially Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, amazing.
So he talks like Edgar Allan Poe, but he's like really cheerful. And it's like except like when he like pulls out a shotgun or something, like it's bonkers. And the guy who plays him in the series is like, he nails it. I was watching it going, this is so enjoyable. they have nailed the book. Like it does a massive amount of service to the book.
Oh, sounds great.
I was seriously surprised by like how, because when I heard about it, I remember hearing about the adaptation. I was like, yeah, okay, we'll see. And I was like, yeah, Joe Kinnaman, yeah, cool, could be interesting. And then it came out, and it came out not long. I think it came out the day I left to come here to Bangkok. So when I arrived the following weekend, I was like, all right, I'll watch it. Yeah. And I sat down on my laptop and I started watching it, and I was like, this is fucking brilliant.
Oh, that's good to hear.
It's like, yeah.
I was worried it would be crap.
10 episodes.
I've heard great
10
things.
episodes, hour long each. Like,
cool.
I think we have entered a period now where Netflix are just going to be adapting anything and everything under the sun. I know they're doing books. I know they're bringing back to life old TV shows and stuff like that. I'm happy with that. I think they're just taking the scattergun approach and just trying to get as much out, and they'll happily let stuff die that doesn't need to keep going. Did anyone watch Dirk Gently? I haven't actually seen the Netflix
I did.
one.
I haven't seen it.
I did. That was my backup as well in case someone mentioned Alder Carbon. Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency.
Now, which one did you watch? Did you watch Netflix or did you watch the BBC one? Because they came out like 4 years apart, which is not enough time.
I watched the Netflix one.
Elijah Wood, right?
Yes,
Elijah Wood, and I watched the BBC one with Stephen Mangan.
You said that like as if he's
a disease. No, I always say Steve. I always nearly say Stephen.
I got a bad case of Stephen Mangan.
Got Mangan on the old Stephen, you know yourself. It's Mangan. I know. I always nearly say Stephen Merchant. It's the dude from Green Wing and Episodes. That was and it was really good. It was nicely manic and pacey.
Okay.
So the Dirk Gently's one that I on Netflix. There's one that's just called Dirk Gently.
Yep.
Which is that's the one. The TV series called Dirk Gently, which is the one with Stephen Mangan.
I still laugh at that name, by the way. That's such a funny name.
Yeah, and then to distinguish it, they call it Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency.
Right.
As the Netflix one, and that's it's directed by the main showrunner is Max Landis.
Oh yeah.
Who did Chronicle and who's John Landis' son, and so I haven't watched season 2 yet, and but it's basically if you've read the book, have you ever read the book?
Yes, very good.
Right, it's not based on the book. It's another case that Dirk goes on.
Good, yeah, that makes sense.
So they don't try and adapt the story from the book. The whole idea is that you know who Dirk Gently is. You know what he's about. If you're familiar with the books, here's the thing. And he's there's a ton of people in it that you'd recognize, but like it's pretty violent.
Okay,
it is as mental as you'd expect it to be. It has. There's an actor who I've seen in a handful of things recently over the last few years, and he's in this. And every time I've seen him, I've just liked him more and more. His name is Michael Eklund,
right?
Eklund. He's in Arrow. He's in what was the other things? He's in a fucking Altered Carbon.
Oh, nice. All right, there you go.
So you've read the book Altered Carbon, yeah, Lelas?
Yeah.
Okay, he plays Dimmy the Twin.
Cool.
Right.
I love the name of the twin.
Well, sorry. Let me explain. He plays one of the Dimmy the Twin.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
That'll make more sense to Lelas,
yeah,
right?
That makes sense.
So he plays the second one, and he's in 88 Minutes with Al Pacino. He's in The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. He was in The Divide, which was directed by Michael Bain. Oh, sorry, no, it starred Michael Bain.
All right.
The guy from Aliens. Yeah. What else is he in? He's in The Call with Halle Berry. Just trying to see what else is he in here. But he's like I saw him in Altered Carbon, Dirk Gently. He's in Gotham at one point.
Oh, I love Gotham.
He's in Bates Motel for like 8 episodes. If you've seen Bates Motel.
I think Gotham is one where they just start killing characters, and I'm like, you can't do that. They have to be around when fucking Batman shows up. Those are important people. What?
And he's in Fringe. You've seen Fringe, haven't you, Jamie?
Yeah, I love Fringe.
Okay, so you remember the episode where they essentially do flowers for Algernon?
Yes.
When they take a guy who's mentally disabled, and they make him hyper intelligent.
Yes.
He's the guy that they make hyper.
Oh right, yes, he's very good.
He's a very good actor, and he's basically he plays the leader of a group called the Rowdy Three, who are in Dirk Gently.
Yeah,
and they're essentially like slight spoiler, but it doesn't really spoil anything. They're psychic vampires.
Okay,
so they show up. They cause a massive amount of destruction. They traumatize you. They feed off that trauma, and then they leave.
That's what I do.
All right.
Hey,
but like the first time they show up in the series is fantastic because they just hear the van pulling up outside, and there's a massive amount of music, and people start roaring and shouting, and all you hear is like Dirk is like, "Oh no!" and he runs to the window and looks out. And the four of them jump out of the truck.
The four of the Rowdy Three
shouting, yeah. And he jump out, and he's like, "Oh no, you have to hide me." He turns to Todd, who's Elijah Wood's character. He's like, "You have to hide me," and he's like, "What? Who are those guys?" He's like, "Are they with you?" He's like, "No, they're the Rowdy Three." And Todd looks at the window. He's like, "There's four of them." He's like, "I'm wildly aware." It's like he's run into these guys before. But they're they basically just show up and wreck the place.
Nice.
Every time they show up, they're essentially a force of chaos. They show up and they just cause as much destruction as possible. And they have this weird thing. Basically, what they do is they kind of explain more of what Dirt Gently is in the TV series. In this TV series, they introduce a lot of characters. The Rowdy Three, Bart Churlish, which is played by Brad Dourif's daughter.
Weird.
There's one or two other characters, and the whole idea is
Brad
that they were
Dourif
all
with like long curly hair for some reason.
Let's go with that.
Yeah,
just a bow on top of his head. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah. There's basically there's a group. There's a thing called Project Blackwing, which was a CIA project to evaluate potential psychics or people with strange abilities.
Yeah, and
Dirk was one of them. And the whole idea is that all these others were as well.
Right.
And Dirk is under surveillance because they're just they're like, the project was shut down, but they still need to track everyone.
Yeah.
So there's a point where like he's being followed, and he goes in. This is all in the first episode. He goes into your man Todd's apartment, and then the Rowdy Three show up, and the guy, like the colonel in the car, who spots it, and he has this idiot psychic. He's just like a trooper assigned to him, and he's like, "Oh, this is bad." And they're like, "What is it, sir?" And he's like, "You just put the gun away. It won't even work." so it's kind of this thing of like, you can't kill these guys. Yeah. It's just not going to happen. Like, and then Bart Churlish is so you know the way he's a holistic detective.
Yes,
he naturally understands everything is interconnected, and it will naturally allow him to be.
Yeah, you have to solve the whole crime.
Yes. So Fiona Dourif's character, Bart Churlish, is a holistic assassin.
Of course.
So if she meets someone and they do something weird, she knows she has to kill them, and she'll always be justified. It'll always turn out that person was a racist or a murderer or like, you know, a drug trafficker or a rapist or whatever. And that's like, she's just like, I just kill people, and she never gets caught. It's
amazing.
Like the universe always ensures that she never gets caught.
I always love that. I love that trope. It's a really weird one, which is that certain characters just get away with things, and it's I know it's the author basically saying, I don't want him to go to prison, but it's honestly, I like the idea that there's because the character never knows why. It's always just like, there's some power at work here, and everything. And they mentioned it once in like the Johnny the Homicidal Maniac comics, where he freaks out. He goes, I do the worst things, and then sometimes I've gone to the police station and they just forget that the crimes have happened. And I'm like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah. But she's essentially that. Like, the universe will not let her die. And there's a point where she takes a gun to make the point. She puts the gun to her head. It's a revolver. It's a semi-automatic. Puts it to her head, pulls the trigger, click. Points it at a guy, pulls the trigger, kills him. Puts the thing in the back of her head, pulls it again, click. Points it back at the body, pulls the trigger, and puts another bullet in him. She's like, it will not let me die.
Amazing.
So it's a fucking mental series.
That sounds like a really good way to do an adaptation, which is basically take all the characters and say, all right, there's no point in us doing the story that already exists, but like the concept of a dude having to solve the entire crime, we can do an episode out of that. Like every episode will be one crime where everything is interconnected. We can go crazy with this.
Oh no, it's one crime for the entire season.
Oh, is it amazing? Even better.
Yeah. And it actually works really well. It's an absolute mind job at some points. You're just like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah,
feels like you're watching a Cronenberg movie at some points. But it's
I'm sold.
I'm amazed you haven't watched it. It's actually really, really good. I was very surprised. I kind of expected it to be just kind of all right.
Yeah, all right. No.
But, yeah.
Sounds like a recommendation.
Fantastic. That's honestly plenty of good recommendations in this episode. Yeah. Cool.
That's what we're here for.
All right. Any final thoughts? Any Jerry Springerisms?
Final thoughts? No,
Not really.
no.
Cool. Then with that, see you guys. Have fun.
Take it easy.
Any shout outs to Detective Dark Side Detective Kickstarter still going? They're my friends, they're good people. Have a look at that. I'll be posting stuff about the weird stuff I'm going to do to Lelas at the end of October. So that'll be fun. Keep watching Facebook and see what unfolds. And have fun.
Lelas, do you want to plug your books before you go?
Oh yeah.
I think Johnny's is doing that by accident or intentionally by accident through the whole.
I liked your books. They are available on your website, brianlelas.com.
brianlelasbooks.com. You can get them on Amazon as well. They're out there in the wild.
They're very good. They are. I really like Dead Cartography. I genuinely think it's modern day fairy tales in the style of like Brothers Grimm and stuff like that, but in a way that is just really delightful to read. So I am a fan.
Do you come with the car?
Great.
And on that note,
have fun, kids. I'm going to wave up.
Take it easy,
guys. It's going to be above me. There you go.
See you guys.